My name is Bear Saragusa, and this is the Hunting Hound podcast presented by W Hunting Supply. Join us as we go deep discussing hounds and everything hound related with the men and women from around the globe who've dedicated their lives to hunting with hounds. We ask them about the game they pursue, the breeds they run, and to get their insight into what it means to be a modern-day houndsman. I hope you enjoy this podcast. Leave us a comment and subscribe wherever podcasts are available.
I hope I didn't put you too far behind on your schedule.
No. This is great. I really appreciate you coming on, and this was the thing that was gonna end my week was the sitting down and talking to you. So I've been looking forward to this all week. It's been a crazy week too. It's been a lot at work, and my wife crashed and totaled my dog truck on Tuesday.
Oh no, is she okay?
She's totally fine. Both kids are totally fine, which I'm so thankful for. So the truck is replaceable. So I'm happy. I'm not worried about the truck at all. That's
okay. Well, that's
replaceable.
That's certainly good. Well, I've been battling this COVID deal.
Yeah, how are you feeling?
I'm just finally getting. I think today is either the 14th or 15th day, and my strength is coming back. It was just one of those deals for me. A little bit of tick in my voice, and there's not much I can do about that.
No worries.
But at any rate, just no energy. Yep. Just absolutely put me flat on my back. I mean, I just couldn't get enough energy to do anything. Otherwise, no other symptoms, no lung problems or anything.
Wow. So, interesting.
Yeah, my wife and I both went through it. So anyway, so it's been an interesting week for me too. I did manage to get a show recorded a day late. I'm sure Shannon was screaming at me out there, but
oh, Shannon's got she's got the patience of an angel with all this baloney she puts up with for me anyway. So I'll only speak for myself.
Right. Well, I can identify for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm yours. Whatever you want to talk about. I thought I'd just let it rock your way. Whatever you want to do.
Sounds great. Yeah. Well, there was nothing like. There's a whole bunch of things I'd love to talk to you about, but mainly I just wanted to get you on here because I wanted to. I was looking forward to talking to you, I guess, about a couple of years ago. We were going to sit down and do, I came on another podcast that you were a part of back then. And, and you didn't end up you weren't on that episode, and then, never kind of got to catch up to you until now. So I basically just wanted to catch up to you.
Yeah.
I've listened to all your podcasts from the very, very beginning. And I've enjoyed them. I really, I kind of loved the storyteller's voice you brought to your podcast and continue to bring to your podcast. So I was really excited to see you getting onto the W platform, with your current podcast is a lot of fun to listen to. You've gotten some great guys on there. I really, really enjoyed the one that you did, just telling the story of how you got into the plots and how your father got into the plots. I've just gotten my first plot myself,
right,
a little less than a year ago, and
looks like you had some beginner's luck there.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. There's you'd be hard pressed to find a bigger knucklehead in this sport than me, I think. And I am a beginner. I am green as they come with the hounds. Did the Huskies for a while, and there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences too. And this is a much, much better dog than it makes any sense that I've got, based on how much experience I have. He's a gritty, hard dog, and is doing some impressive things that are just kind of leaving me scratching my head. I'm trying to figure out how to best sort of approach training him, without taking away that magic that he's showing.
Well, the plot dog is a different guy. He, they used to say that they were the utility dog of the Southern Appalachians. which they were. I mean, they herded the stock, they babysat the kids, they treed the squirrels, they chased the bears, they caught the hogs, they treed the coons. Uh, they guarded the homestead. They were an all around character there, and they didn't. They were kind of particular in the early days of who they buddied up with. They got the reputation of kind of being a little bit of one man dog. A lot of the bad rap that the Plotts got about being aggressive with other dogs was unfounded, and that was just strictly a carryover from the idea that they were big game dogs. They were hog and bear hunting dogs. So if you're going to tackle a bear, you must be mean. You must be tough to do that.
Sure.
So that just kind of carried over. But down through the years of my experience with the breed, we never encountered any of that undue dog aggressiveness. Young male dogs in a kennel are going to posture, and they're going to kind of, try to get that ego thing worked out, and all. But you got to be on top of that when they're young. And if you do, you let them know right away that that's not acceptable. We're not going to go that route. So,
right.
But at any rate, that was, I grew up with that dog. So, in my mind, hunting a Walker Hound or a blue tick or a red bone was kind of a tame thing, kind of a, those are hounds, and they, you can catch game with them, and that's all cool. But if you really want to up your game a notch, and put a little more excitement in it, go with the Plott. But that was always, the kind of attitude I had toward the breed, from the time I was very, very young guy.
Sure. I can see why. I have a running walker here, and I've got a grade walker crossed with a Russian hound as well. And there, it's the difference between trying to get somewhere as fast as you can in a car and a Sunday drive. It's that big of a difference hunting those other two compared to hunting that Plott. That Plott, I need to be on my game. I need to be ready to walk. I need to be, prepared to be out there for the other day, 38 hours, to get him back. And, these other guys, it's like, I can go out in the morning and be like, okay, I'll be back by lunch, and be reasonably sure that that's true, but with that Plott, it's like, well, I'll try and be back by work on Monday,
Yeah. Well, back in the days before the GPS or telemetry collars, it was a common thing for us to lose dogs because they just basically didn't have any comeback button. They had no quit.
Right.
If it was a young dog that messed up and was running a deer or whatever, back in those days, I remember we hunted in an area called Camp Creek State Forest, and we hunted in the headwaters of this creek. And it was like 4 miles down off the mountain, another 4 miles back up onto the next ridge in the high country. And the creek dropped off and went downstream to a state park and headquarters area where there was a superintendent that lived and all. And, if the dogs got after a deer, we knew what we got to do is walk back to the truck, however far down that canyon we were, get in the vehicle and drive around several miles and come out in the bottom of that park down toward the mouth, because that's where those dogs were going to come out, because it was a river down there, and they would take that deer to the river, and there wasn't any pecking around on it. And also when we, it got to be a serious game to break a young dog real quick.
Yeah. Sure.
And we had to do that. They weren't all naturally straight, but as the years went on with the breeding, a lot of that came out of them, and they were more easily programmed to the game that we wanted to run.
Sure. So you were able to breed you were able to breed that out of him a little bit.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
That's interesting because I mean, the walker, I've got a running walker, and she is she has been the trashiest hound I've ever hunted, or hunted over. She's if she'll hunt the first thing she sees is basically her thing. And if it's a
Yeah.
fox, she does a fantastic job. I've had some just fun fox hunts with her. But if it's a deer, that's your day blown trying to get in front of her
Yeah.
and those deer, and
Yeah.
that can be frustrating. The Russian was the straightest. I mean, he was the straightest dog I've ever seen. He started fox. It was the first thing he started, and he never looked sideways. He wouldn't run pine marten. He wouldn't run badger. He wouldn't run, anything else. Never ran anything else than fox. And this Dan dog, this plot, he'll run fox, he'll run lynx, and he'll run bear, and that I'm fine with all of those things. And he'll run badger, which I'm fine with. But he won't run roe deer or the smaller deer species, but he'll run moose because he got kicked. He got kicked in the face by a moose as a pup, and it seemed like
vendetta.
Yeah. I mean, unbelievable. Like, just, he was 4.5 months old, got kicked smack in the nose, and it just seems like he's got a vendetta for him. If he can run one, he'll run one, and he gets in a little bit too close. If I was a betting man, that would be, unless I can figure out a way to break him of that, because here in Norway we can't use the shock collars. So if I can't figure out a way to break him of the moose stuff, if I was a betting man, my guess would be that that's how he's eventually gonna end his days as a hunting dog, is by getting in a little bit too close with a bull or a female with a calf.
Well, now would that be a bull be more apt to catch him with the antlers or catch him with a back foot, say, like a kick?
Actually, the way that they tend to get them, and the way that the moose got him the last time, and I've been chased by moose a couple of times back in Maine, where they come at you with their front feet. They'll lash right out straight with their front feet. They've got a much better range of motion, like a cow or something. They're able to get their front feet almost above their heads and just bring them slam them down. And the bull might wave a little bit and threaten a little bit with his antlers, and might do a charge with the antlers, but it seems like for the most part, the videos I've seen and my own experiences with the moose, is that they tend to go in with their front feet.
I see.
Yeah, for some reason.
Well, it seems like no matter where you hunt, there's some kind of animal out there that wants to eat your puppy, and here, of course, it's the alligator in Florida, where I am. Across the northern tier of the U.S., now it's the wolf.
Yeah, that's a bad deal.
Which is just devastating to the hounds people.
Oh, it's terrible.
Back in our day, it was, primarily the getting a dog injured severely or killed by a bear, which has happened more times than we wanted, for sure.
Sure.
But, it's a dangerous game.
It is a dangerous game, and that's how it's gonna be. I had one of the very. It doesn't seem like it's very often that the really great dogs live to be ancient. One of the very best. The only example I can think of in recent memory, anyway, is one of the really good brown bear plots over here. Was a dog that the Swedish bear hunter Rasmus Bullström imported from British Columbia. And that dog, his name was Boss, was just an unbelievable dog. Or Blazer was his name. unbelievably a good dog. Was able to stop bears, keep them there. Very, very rarely got injured, and lived until he was 11 or 12. Which was
exceptional.
Which was exceptional. But
Yeah.
his kids are not living that long. They're a little bit more intense, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
So they're getting themselves into a little bit more trouble.
Well, it's interesting down through the years, if you follow the chronological story there of those bear pin bred plots, some of the most successful of those dogs were the dogs that were hurt the least. They were certainly aggressive, and the bear pin fancy female, which was out of the first cross of the Butch Jill dogs, she got hurt several times. She was a close fighter. She got bit through the flews on both sides of her muzzle. She got bit clear through the brisket one time, both sides where you could stick fingers through there. Wow. She got hit in the lower abdomen one time, and it bursted that peritoneum in there, and all of her intestines were hanging in a sack looked like a basketball.
Wow.
Hanging there. So she would get in there and mix it up, but she never did get fatally killed.
Right.
Fatally killed. That's a little.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
That's really killed right there.
Yeah, that's really killed. That's you don't come back from that one. Yeah.
But anyway, then her let's see, granddaughter Julie.
Yep.
Was probably, we probably looked at more bear over Julie than any female that we had. And she never got hurt.
Right.
But her tactic was, she was a mosquito, a yellow jacket. She was all around, buzzing all around, and in and out, and more of a harassment game.
Sure.
Than actual. I don't know how much pain she ever put on a bear.
Okay.
But she definitely could make one climb a tree when the other dogs were struggling.
She annoyed them. Yeah.
Just annoyed. Yeah. So, but well, when I was a kid and started out, and thinking about bear hunting, and my dad brought home that first story of the dogs catching a bear over this rain-swollen creek and in the middle of a howling snowstorm and fighting the bear and all. I always envisioned that bear hunting was all about a war between a dog and a bear, And as I got to be older, I learned that so many more components to it than that, and then became pretty much a student of dogs, the way they trailed and the way they, handled different scenting conditions and terrain conditions and how they related to the other members of the pack that you were hunting them with and all those kind of things. And I'm certainly don't know all there is to know about any of that stuff, but it became, kind of a lifelong thing for me to just study that stuff. And it was because of my dad, a lot of that too, because he was a student of those things. He was what I'd call a consummate woodsman. He was totally aware of everything that was going on around him when he was outdoors. And I was always kind of the ADHD kid, my mind was bouncing around everywhere, but yeah.
It is endlessly fascinating. Just working dogs in general, I've been fascinated with since I was just, a itty bitty guy. Which is why I've had working dogs, since I was 10. But the hounds are, the sled dogs. You've got this thing where it's in some ways there's less trust involved. Okay. The dogs need to trust you that you're not going to push them too hard and let them go too hard, because they have this sort of, genetic predisposition to just want to go. And if you let them, a sled dog will run itself to death.
I get you.
But the basic thing with the sled dogs is that they are, bottom line, always tied to you. It's like walking a big pack of dogs on a leash. They are you're attached to them. They can't go anywhere that you don't allow them to go.
Right.
And that's been a real new thing for me with the hounds, is just that ability to just learning that ability to just let them go and let them go out and do their thing and work naturally way far away from me, where it's sort of that release of control has been the hardest part for me, transitioning to the hounds. And I knew early on that was going to be the hardest part. So I've had to come up with ways. Sometimes I need to literally put a hand over my own mouth and just sit down and make myself sit down and be quiet and let them work
Over the years, having younger people or newbies or whatever come and hunt with me, that's something that's pretty common, Bear. You see with that fear of releasing this dog, total freedom, how will I get it back?
Right. Right.
Or if it goes somewhere I don't want it to go, what do I do? And it's daunting to a person who's never fooled with hounds before.
It is. Absolutely. It absolutely is. It's been a learning curve, and like I said, it's endlessly fascinating to me, and that's it's why I got into it. It's why I started the podcast, not because I felt like I had anything particularly of value to add to the dialogue, but because it gave me the excuse that I felt like I needed to talk to people like yourself, people that I can who have done the things that I want to do, have seen the things that I want to see, and gives me the excuse I need to talk to those people. And try.
Well, there's always someone out there that has more experience, that has done more, who has seen more game, caught, has more experience, and it's always good to learn from those kinds of individuals and to see the different kinds of hunters. I've had just I don't think the podcast, or thank the podcast venue for opening a few doors for me for things that I'd kind of wanted to do for a long time, but just didn't take the time to do them. You mentioned hunting with foxhounds, and I went out and hunted bobcats with Shorty Gorham in South Texas.
Oh, cool. That must have been fun.
An awesome hunt. Just tremendous, a pack of 13 foxhounds. They handled terrifically. They were just, it was just a different world,
Sure.
in that brush country of southern Texas. I don't think anybody has any idea how thick that country is until you get out there and experience it.
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. That's so cool. That must have been an experience.
Oh, it was. And these are foxhounds that have been bred for cat hunting for generations out there.
Really?
And
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. You mentioned on the podcast about the bear pen plots and your history, that you had just kind of timing wise missed the chance to go and hunt brown bear in Japan.
Right.
Have you hunted brown bear in other areas? Have you gone up to BC or anything like that? Have you hunted?
No, I have not. In fact, my only bear hunting experiences have been with black bear, of course, color phase bear out west. I've hunted New Mexico, Arizona, hunted, let's see, where else out that way? Those two states primarily, as far as western states, for bear. Hunted, of course, in Wisconsin, Michigan, Virginia, the coast, Carolina, Florida, all up and down the East Coast, Virginia, West Virginia, of course. But no, that was my only experience. And, and actually didn't become an experience, but it was something I wanted to do very much. And the stories that I heard both from reading the local newspapers and from talking to hunters like D. DeMoss of Olympia, Washington, who had hunted those bears with hounds. That it just seemed like the ultimate hunt to me. And but that caution was there from the very start from D. It was, do not go after those bears with a deer rifle. Don't take a 243 up there.
Right.
Because when he said any one of those bears that I've ever killed charged me, when I killed the bear. And so yeah, that was just a dream that did not become a reality for me. I had a limited window there. I was only in Japan for 3 years. And so I had a 4-year enlistment with the Air Force, a year in Texas through school and training and all. And then I went to Japan. And I knew that there were plot dogs there. There were hog hunters in the southern part of Japan that were using plots on hogs. And most of the bear hunting, I think, that has been done with hounds in Japan were on those southern bears, more like our black bears or Himalayan bears or whatever they are.
Right. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, the black bear, hunting is something that I have never done. I'm working on it already, getting back and getting out with some getting out while I'm over there. My goal is to make it to Plot Fest.
To the APA Breed Day. Oh, the Plot Fest in North Carolina.
Yeah, at the Meadow, the Meadowlark Smoky Mountain Heritage Center. The one that I'm going to try to make it out for that one, and then we'll see how it coincides time-wise with the APA.
I would suggest to you that if you want to meet the greatest number of bear hunters and enthusiasts and purists and knowledgeable breeders, APA days.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's the big one in that regard.
Right.
Years ago, the National Bloodhound Association would have been the be-all, end-all.
Sure.
But over the years, various just extenuating circumstances, time of the year and things like that, the bear hunters kind of migrated away from going to the MPHA days, more because of the time of the year. They were in Michigan and Wisconsin and so forth, bear hunting at that time.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then the springtime gathering there in Tennessee, for many years it was in South Carolina, has kind of become where most of the bear hunters gather each year.
That makes sense. Yeah. No, I'll keep that in mind. Because I would like to see if I can make it to a couple of places, and I'm going to go and drive around a little bit and visit some people, and then I'll head up to Maine and visit my folks. I haven't seen them for a few years now, and try and see what Mark Dufresne's up to, maybe, or and see
one of my favorite people.
Such a cool guy. My gosh, what an interesting guy. I've had my fingers in a lot of different pies throughout the years, and it's not often that I can sit down and talk to a guy who's done as big a variety of random things as I have. I mean, what an interesting guy. Did the timber sports competitions for a bunch of years with the axes and the chainsaws and all that, and his talented taxidermist.
Oh
my gosh. Wow, that guy's he did this sort of sequence of over a couple of weeks. He did I guess about 6 months ago, this sequence of pictures as he made a standard, like, run-of-the-mill bear mount foam, whatever you call it, like the
form,
thing.
I guess.
Form, exactly. Where he wasn't real happy with it, and he changed it and added a little bit here and there and molded it, and what he came up with was just it was amazing. I mean, it was
He's an artist in
he's
the
an
truest
artist.
sense of the word.
Absolutely, totally agree. Yep.
Well, I had a very enjoyable few days with him a couple of years ago up in Escanaba, Michigan, at the Upper Peninsula Bear Houndsman meeting that Joe and Nancy Hudson
Oh, sure.
put on up there each year. And Mark and I both were on the program up there. And so I got to spend a lot of time with Mark. And of course, we had talked dogs, for quite some time and had met at APA days.
Okay.
But just I could spend weeks with Mark Dufresne. He's
I can and have spent many an evening chatting back and forth with him on Messenger. I've never actually met I've seen him. We were both at a timber sports competition at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So I've seen him, but I've never actually met him face to face. And the other funny thing is he'll road his dogs in an area where I used to train, like dryland train my huskies back in the day.
Okay.
So I remember passing plots while I was out there, and he remembers passing teams. So I mean, we've passed each other on the periphery a bunch of times without actually connecting.
I gotcha.
So super.
The
super
scope of his
guy.
taxidermy work, and when I saw things like these full mounted moose,
the bull moose,
like the bull moose,
yeah,
and he can make a bobcat look more like a bobcat than nature can.
You're right.
I mean,
that's the truth.
He is just phenomenal.
Really, really talented
and a great guy. You would never know what skills and talents and all lay within the heart of that guy for sure. And he is passionate about his plot dogs too.
He is. We've had a lot of good conversations about the breed, and he's got the ability and attention to detail of an artist, but the mind of a scientist. I mean, he's able to just take these abstract, complicated ideas and not only understand them but apply them to his own program. It's amazing. I mean, the guy. I got a lot of respect for Mark Dufresne.
For sure. Mark, you can send your contribution to.
That's right. You can. We take.
Put it in the old podcaster's retirement fund.
That's right. No, but yeah, I would love to get back and get out after some black bear, because I never did. I wasn't into the hounds when I moved from the States 15 years ago, or pretty soon 15 years ago. But they do bear hunt over here, but what we're hunting over here is that Eurasian brown bear, and they won't tree. And there's also a quota system, so the season will start, and then there's a specific number of bears we can take before the season's over. So what we end up with is a period of a couple of days where it is just a free for all. I talked to guys that got into fist fights on the road over who saw the track first. I mean, there's people everywhere.
I thought we Southern rednecks were the only one that did stuff.
No, you get that Viking blood riled up, man, and they'll go nuts. But what happened this year was that because of the coronavirus and everything, they'd shut down all of Sweden apart from a couple of counties along the border. So there's only a couple of places you could hunt. The Norwegians could hunt without ending up in quarantine on the way back. So all the Norwegians, we all ended up over there in a very small area, realistically, and hunting very, very hard to try and get bears before the season ended, before the quota had been reached. And what ended up happening is that, we had they had bear tracks cut and ready when it hit, when it was legal to start.
Right.
The dogs
Right.
were on the ground
Mm.
that second.
Mm.
And that first day they had some great runs. Bunch of bears got harvested. You know, it was. But what happened is that they kept at it because it was such a short amount of time. So by day 2, some of these bears had been on their feet for 30 hours moving away from dogs.
Mm.
And they were getting tired, and they were getting hungry, and they were getting angry.
Mm.
And just day 1, like I talked to a couple people who had, a dog get a little beat up here and there. Day 2 was just like a massacre. It was insane. Just the bears, about halfway through day 2, it seemed like they just all decided to sit down and fight. And boy, there were a bunch of beat up dogs after that. A bunch of dogs got killed.
Imagine.
A bunch of, it was, it got pretty intense. It's, the black bear hunting seems like a ton of fun. The brown bear hunting, I'm still kind of on the fence about. Boy, that seems, you talk about a war, that seems like it turns into a war pretty quick.
Well, everything reminds me of a story, but I can recall so many times over the years my father telling the boys, okay, we've treated this bear twice now, or maybe 3 times. Maybe it was in training season in August or whatever. We weren't taking the bear. Time to leave this bear alone. This bear's been harassed enough. This bear is going to be angry. This bear, when it comes out of the tree, it's going to kill or hurt dogs.
Okay.
You need to think about that and just let this bear go, and let's go find another one to run.
Sure.
Case in point, we were on a beautiful day. I remember it was probably August in the mountains of West Virginia, lying back in the sunlight on the hillside, looking up a tree at a bear that had been treed a couple of times already. And, well, let's get the dogs and let's go. Well, we knew we had to walk out of this canyon back in on top to where our vehicles and the roads were and so forth. And no, somebody said, let's let her out again and she'll run to the top of the mountain. We won't have to lead all these dogs. She'll tree back up on top. My dad was never a pushy kind of guy. He was never tried to push his will on anybody for anything. He would state his case, and then that was pretty much it. Well, except when it came to me being his son, I was expected to toe the mark without question. But at any rate, nope, we're going to run it. Okay, they let that bear down, and she immediately picked out a walker female in that pack and killed that dog as quick as you could have done it with a switchblade knife,
Sure. Okay.
And knowledge knows, but and it's easy for me now at age 75 to fall into the trap of, boys, you need to listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. And I try not to do that because youth is not going to listen to that. They're going to have to find their own way. But at any rate, what you said just reminded me of that very much, of those bears being tired, being over it, so to speak. And we're just not going to put up with this anymore.
Sure. Yeah, to sort of just go off on a little bit of a tangent here, I think that it's a little bit unfortunate, and that in the past there was at least, I am just old enough to have been sort of part of that generation where you still kind of listened to your elders. You didn't buck good sense, common sense. Experience was the deciding factor in who was kind of in charge of any given situation. If it was my dad who has had the most experience, he was in charge until, my Uncle Bob showed up potentially. You know what I'm saying? It's like, depending on what we were doing. And I find more and more I find myself getting frustrated with, and I'll include myself in this, these younger guys who, they they put so much time and energy into making sure that people know that they're legitimate, that they lose the opportunity to learn from some really excellent houndsmen. A great example of what I'm talking about is I did a podcast here with Hidde Vanderkamp a couple of weeks ago. And he runs these Cole National cat dogs up north. And I'd talked to Hidde a bunch of times on Instagram. I talked to him on Facebook a bunch before I invited him on the podcast. And he came up, on the screen. In my mind, I'd never seen a picture of him. He was such a humble guy, and he had so much knowledge that he just kind of, throughout the course of a conversation, it would end up coming out that I was getting more and more of a vibe every time I talked to him that this was a very knowledgeable guy.
Right.
So I had it in my mind that this was, I expected when he popped up on my screen, I expected to see a 45, 50-year-old guy. And just based on how humble he was, he carried himself as a very humble, maybe 40, 45-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And he popped up on my screen, and he's maybe 30.
Yeah.
Real young guy, super energetic,
mm-hmm.
you know? And it was just, it really blew me away because the respect that guy had or has when he's talking to people, his ability to just pop up and ask for information, and with none of the chest beating, none of the posturing that I see in a lot of these younger guys, was so refreshing. And it just sort of drove home to me that I think we've got a little bit of a problem in the hound community right now, that we're actually losing a lot of excellent. We're losing a lot of good knowledge just because us, so many of us young guys are not humble enough to, be quiet and listen to the people who've done it.
Well, when I grew up, and I use that term a lot anymore, it seems, it was a natural order of things that the elder people in the hunting party were the ones with the most knowledge. And it wasn't really stated that way, but it wasn't questioned either. Just by virtue of the fact that they had been there, done that for so many years, they were revered because of those years.
Right.
The years were like stripes or epaulets.
Sure.
That, and younger guys like myself, and one of my early podcasting stories was on the Houndsman XP podcast that Chris Powell and I started together.
Mm-hmm.
And it talked about me as a kid going on a bear hunt with my father. And I told this story about in the early dawn hours after we'd driven this 4-hour or something trip from our home in southern West Virginia. And we got there just as the sun was peeping over, the eastern ridge. And hunters were gathered around a fire and just standing around, as hunters in the mountains would do at that time. Hunts consisted mainly of the guys that were going to be handling the dogs going into the mountain with the dogs coupled together, and maybe a start dog that would be released at some point, with the hope of starting a bear. And then there were standers, that we called them, that were placed around at the known crossings and so forth that the bear might take. But as they were standing around the circle here, someone made a comment about why does Fielder have this kid up here?
Yeah.
You may have heard that story.
I remember. It's ringing a bell, but I don't remember the.
And it was, it was just my father stepped into the circle of light there at the fire and said, "That's my son. Where I go, he goes." And that was basically the end of the story,
Right.
But there was just that idea, as a kid, I never interjected my 2 cents worth into a conversation about bear dogs or bear hunting or planning the hunt. It would be typical for a younger hunter today to say, "Well, we ought to go up to such and such ridge and that crossing up there because I saw sign up there last weekend." What maybe if I did see sign there, I wasn't going to say that because it wasn't my place.
Right.
It wasn't my station. Now you think, well, that was non-productive. You should have spoke up. Maybe the hunt would have gone better. If you know, because my opinion really didn't carry very much
Right.
weight. Well, the older hunters would be, well, maybe he did see the bear sound there and maybe he didn't. And am I going to walk all the way up there just based on what this snot-nosed kid says?
Right.
Probably not. So, there was a changing down through the years of all that, but it was just generally accepted that each party had the elder statesmen, the elder hunters that knew what they were talking about. And they were usually the guys that no longer followed the dogs. They were the field generals. They were the ones that laid out the hunt and said, "This is where we should go and this is what we should do." And I will interject this. I think the hunts were more successful because of that, because the guys did listen to this knowledge of that these bears do have common crossing areas and patterns that they run and so forth over time. And these people paid attention to things like that back then,
Yeah.
But now it's more or less, we have the electronics, we have the equipment, and so I see it. I go up to the mountains each fall and go bear hunting with a group of guys. And, and I can see a little bit of push and tug between the hunters, sometimes one wanting to kind of be, be in charge. And there's a temptation to do that, I think. But it's changed. Times have changed a lot from when I was a young hunter, and we definitely did revere the opinions and the experience level of the older hunters.
Yeah, it's something that I certainly try and instill in my own boys. That I've got 2 sons. One's 9, the other one's 7. That it's okay to just be quiet and soak it in, because you're going to learn. If you can manage to be quiet and listen, you're going to learn more than if you start asking questions.
My dad had an expression that was short and sweet: pay attention.
Yeah.
But Dad, can this and that, pay attention. Just what's going on here,
Right.
You don't have to interject anything. Just pay attention, and that's hard for a younger hunter to do, apparently, nowadays,
I think it is. Yeah, it seems like social media, I kind of, I don't want to just be hacking on social media, but it seems like social media has given people this sense that their opinion matters maybe a little bit more than it does.
Keyboard commandos, I call them.
Yeah, oh man, they're all over the place, aren't they?
Yeah.
But a question I did have for you was, you still get out after bear. What was it that got you? Were you always doing hunting bear and raccoon, or was that something that you kind of made a shift towards at a later point? Or how did the coon hunting kind of enter into your life?
Well, the chicken and the egg type. The coon hunting was probably there earlier than the bear hunting.
Okay.
And it was for my dad as well. My dad grew up on the farm in Tennessee. I've told the story many, many times, with the cur dogs, the tree dogs that they used. for tree game, possums, squirrels, occasional coons,
Mhm.
skunks, any kind of fur bearer that they could catch and skin it and sell the hide. And so after the war, when he and my mother got married and they moved to West Virginia, where she was from, he right away set out to get some dogs of his own. And the first dogs that he had were rabbit dogs. And I don't say beagles because they were actually full size hounds that he ran rabbits with. And that didn't last very long. I think he wanted a tree dog. And so he tried some different things. He got a pair of speckled colored English type dogs from some coonhound kennel. They were pretty trashy, didn't work out real well. Then in 1954, he got this plot female that I talked about. And my dad was kind of a innovator there in that area because nobody had any registered dogs, but these dogs were registered with the UKC. So started coon hunting those dogs. But then about that time, when June came to live with us, I'm about 8 years old.
Okay.
And so at that point on, the coon hunting, then the occasional weekend trips to the eastern mountains a couple hours away to hunt bears. And so my dad and I kind of got into the bear hunting together. And of course, he was able to take it to levels, as a young man that I did not. But anyway, that's kind of how it started out. It was tree game, and then the bears. But you got to understand, at that time in that part of the country, there was very little tree game to be had of any kind. Coons were very scarce. Bears were very scarce. There were black bears all through the eastern mountains, the Appalachian Mountains. But around the turn of the century, around 1900 and through that area and into the Depression, they were just about all cleared out.
Okay.
There were mountain families all through those mountains, and they pretty much had eradicated the black bear, except for a few high mountain ranges. When I say high, in that general area, the highest peaks are somewhere around 4,500 feet above sea level.
Sure.
So they're not the taller mountains of the Smokies, or certainly not the Rockies. But yeah, coon hunting was first. Tree dogs, going with a tree dog, and then being able to go along in these bear hunts. One thing led to another.
Sure. You were using the same dogs for both things?
Yeah, I tried to make that point in that podcast, that all through the years, those dogs that I mentioned in that podcast were used both ways.
Yeah, right.
When I went to Michigan in the early 80s to work for the registries, and I began to talk to the bear hunters up there a lot, and they were all about breaking their dogs off coon. They didn't want a dog to tree a coon at all. Dog gets behind bad water, whatever, you got to go to him. He's got a coon treed. Saw that with some of my own dogs that I took on bear hunts with guys. And it was embarrassing when they'd tree a coon after daylight when you're trying to get a bear track started.
Sure.
So, yeah, but I due to my work, I had to pretty much put the bear hunting on the back burner, whereas my dad was entering into retirement years and all there in West Virginia, and had some good hunters to hunt with, and was able to kind of go full speed bear hunting there for a number of years.
Sure.
So that really improved our efforts, our breeding efforts, and the dogs that we had and all. But they were always the same stock. If I want, for instance, I had this pair of males named Roper and Wrangler. They were 6 months apart. They were sired by a dog called Hills Plot Solomon. He came down from the family breeding of the Butch and Jill dogs and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of that litter, or of the litters sired by the Solomon dog, both of the ones that I chose to train finished out in UKC in their night champion titles and so forth.
Yep.
So I know that they were capable of doing that, but most people didn't do that with the dogs. They simply, kept them for big game hunting. But they were very versatile in that regard, and I had no trouble, using them both ways.
That's interesting. I like. There's something about a versatile dog and a versatile hound that appeals to me. It seems like it's more and more. You're seeing these lines that are becoming more and more specific on one thing, where I kind of still enjoy being out there with a hound or really any dog that has the ability to dip its toes into several ponds, so to speak. And I worry sometimes, and I definitely see it here in Scandinavia, where there people will have one thing that they'll run with their dogs. I've only talked to a couple of guys where it's like, well, we will hunt, badger, pine marten, fox, lynx, bear. There's only a couple of guys I've talked to who will do that. The absolute most of them, it's like, well, we will hunt bear, that's it. Or we'll hunt lynx, that's it. We'll hunt fox, that's it. And it's, I on the one hand, I can understand it makes it very predictable for you. When you go out, what you're going to run. There's no question, But at the same time, I think like how many crazy fun experiences are some of these people going, missing. And not only that, what are they doing to the breed? And a perfect example of that is the Norwegian Dunker Hound. That was a very versatile hound based off of the needs of the poor Norwegian farmers and what they needed to hunt. And that was any fur-bearing animal, basically, including deer, including rabbits, and fox and all of these things. What happened is in the 80s, the fox population collapsed entirely. We got a bad case of, or a bad sort of epidemic of mange, and 90% of the foxes died. So suddenly there weren't foxes to run anymore. And they started breeding them away from the lines that were really good with the fox, and bred them specifically for hare. And, it is very, very hit or miss now in terms of, whether how well a dunker is going to hunt fox, which is really unfortunate because you've got, as you kind of split these dogs into smaller and smaller niches, the genetic, the material that you've got to work with gets slimmer and slimmer. So there's some very serious issues with inbreeding in some of these smaller breeds that I think maybe wouldn't have been the case if they hadn't put so much effort into breeding them to just chase one specific thing.
Well, I see this in the plot breed. And, I know that there will be those that will disagree with what I'm going to say. But always and forever, the plot breed was a locating tree dog. By locating tree dog, I mean they located on scent, and they would stay treed if it was an hour or 2 hours or half the night. And they were first and foremost a tree dog. My father, I heard him say many times, puppies will tree before they'll ever run a track. It was a strong instinct in the plot breed. I've seen down through the years now, with more and more emphasis on the rig hunting and the hot tracks and the trail cams and all the things that everybody wants instant gratification. Let's go run a bear. Let's check the camera. If that big bear's been on there, we'll run that bait. If we don't, we're going to run over to another bait. We're not going to bother. And it has preserved the population, I'm sure, and it's saved a lot of sow bears and cubs and things like that. And that's all good. And I support all that. I don't support taking any of these tools away from bear hunters. But I'm just saying that as far as the dogs themselves, I don't think the plot dog has the natural locating, treeing ability that they had down through the years.
Gotcha. That is, yeah, that makes sense. When you say it, that I hadn't really thought about it, but that makes sense that the breed would change a little bit but are those the big game lines that you're thinking about there?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, what I'm saying here, yeah. What's happening then, that is eroding into that versatility.
Sure.
Because the dog that could be used, taken out of a litter of plot puppies, and let's make a coon dog out of this one. Let's make a bobcat dog out of this one. Let's make a hog dog out of this one.
Right.
We'll make a bear dog out of the other one, and maybe we'll just run red fox with this one, or in the southern deer packs here in the southeast United States.
Right.
Various hound breeds. But the plot, again, without getting on that stump and all, but there's a book called 20 Years Hunting Fishing in the Great Smoky Mountains, written by a self-proclaimed expert hunter named Samuel Honeycutt. Have you read it?
I haven't read it. No, I've heard about it. I would love to read it.
It's a very interesting book. It's a very poorly written book. Mm-hmm. If you're looking for all the aesthetics, of fine writing and punctuation and paragraph usage and all that good stuff, you're probably not going to be impressed. But there is a quote in that book that I picked up on when I started a website for plot people called plotdogs.com, and it's no longer active, but I did operate that for many years, and it had a message forum, and it was a gathering place for plot people. But this Sam Honeycutt wrote that on this one occasion, on a hunt that they took, that all the dogs on the hunt were hounds, except Mark Cathy's dogs.
Okay.
And Mark Cathy's dogs were plot dogs.
Huh.
Okay. So that in a capsule there illustrated how the plot was regarded in the early days. And there's been this argument about whether they were curs or whether they were hounds or whatever.
Right.
He didn't say they were curs. He said all the dogs were hounds except Mark's dogs, and they were plot dogs. Huh. So there was a distinct difference from way back there.
Right.
They were a houndy looking dog. Some of them had longer ears than others, but anyway, there was always that distinction. But those dogs were tree dogs. And that's one of the things that I ask, and I don't mean to throw it out there as a trick question to younger people, but they talk about a certain strain of dogs, of plots, and maybe they're using them for hog hunting. And the dogs specialize. Hog hunters want them tight-mouthed. They want hot-nosed, tight-mouthed, fast dogs that can get up on that hog, get the hog caught, understand all those things. That's what's, I guess, so great about that breed, is that it's versatile enough, to be all those things.
Sure.
But I always like to ask, how does the dog naturally locate and tree on scent? Because to me, that's just kind of the I don't know the term I want to use, but it's like the key to the whole combination for me.
Sure.
Is
The
locating
foundation of
tree dog
skills.
first. Yeah,
Yep.
into the skill set.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main thing. That's the ratchet, I guess.
Gotcha.
And then you can have all these other tools. So, but that's just one old man's opinion.
Well, I love it, Steve. I really, really appreciated you sitting down, or I appreciate you sitting down and talking to me. It's I've wanted to talk to you for a couple of years now, and we've messaged a little bit on Facebook, but it's a totally different thing to get down. It's to sit down and be able to see your face and get to chat a little bit with you. It's been a real pleasure for me. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, the pleasure's all mine, Bear, and I've enjoyed your work for quite some time, and I'm listening to you more and more all the time. Of course, Jason and Buddy kind of introduced me, or you to me, and said you need to listen to this guy. You'll enjoy him, and I certainly have, and I'm envious of your youth. I'm envious of everybody that's young. I said the other day, I just wish I could take my Houndsman card and have more time put on it.
Sure.
But here we go. Put me about 10, maybe 15 years at least on there. And, but it doesn't work that way. The body begins to take its toll. But I've been fortunate enough to have a network of friends across the country and now around the world.
Yep.
Yeah. Amazing to talk to and to exchange ideas. And sure don't ever want to leave the impression that I know everything about this sport, because I certainly don't, but I sure do love it. I don't think anyone can top me on that factor, but it's been good to me in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. And, it's, I don't, you can go back. Anybody who wants to can go back and listen to any of the podcasts I've done, and there's not a single arrogant person on there, because I don't have any time for arrogant people. And it's why, definitely one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is I've listened to your podcasts since you started doing them, and same thing. It's like what I respected a lot about, Hida, is same can be said for a lot of my guests, and certainly you, is that, you're humble guys with a real interest for something that I've also got a real interest for. It's a shared passion and a desire to learn. And I hope that I never lose that. I hope that I can, when I'm, your age, that I can look at a few more years under my belt here and say, that it's still as fascinating to me as it clearly is to you. And that's really cool to me.
Well, I think it will be. And it's exciting for me to think about what the future holds for you and your hounds. And I'm particularly interested in that plot and see how that he.
Yeah, well, he's my main guy at this point. That Russian dog got bitten in the face by a fox, and that was enough to turn him off. Dan gets kicked in the face by a moose and starts a vendetta.
Bring it on, big boy.
Right. This other dog gets bitten in the face by a little fox cub, and that was it for him.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd like to interject just a little bit.
Yeah.
And in this podcasting world, and especially those with that are in the coon hunting world that I kind of circulated in, that was the tank I swam in for many years through my work with the registries and so forth.
Sure.
I won't say it's a temptation, but a lot of the guys want to go out and try to find the superstars, try to find the big winners, try to find the big winning dogs and all that. And those are great stories, and I enjoy hearing them too. But like just this week, I recorded with a young man from the state of Tennessee, Elijah Burnett. Elijah's 26 years old. Elijah is basically a pleasure hunter. He has no credentials. He has no big stories to tell. What he does have is a love and a passion for tree dogs. And I wanted to talk to Elijah and bring him on and see kind of what makes this young man tick, and what's the future looking like from his perspective.
Sure.
And, you know, he's a guy that would send me a lot of questions. And I really enjoy that part of this thing, is getting back and forth on Messenger with people and trying to help them maybe with the problem they have. Or sometimes they give me a real head scratcher, and I'd say, you know, I don't know about that. I'm going to have to think about that. But at any rate, that the point being, you know, is we're all out here together, and it's a sport that so far we can all enjoy, and we have to protect it. That's for sure.
We absolutely do have to protect it. And then there's a lot of, you know, just this last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of new legislation, a lot of new attacks on the sport, and a lot of threats from people who just don't understand what it is that we do, you know, in the same way that you were talking about the plots having, you know, getting an undeserved reputation because they were for being aggressive, because they were bear dogs, and clearly a bear dog needed to be aggressive. I feel like houndsmen in general and hound hunting has gotten a reputation that by association that we don't deserve. And
absolutely.
You know, we need to stand together. And I see, you know, some people in the sport, and some, you know, some profiles in the sport spend more time making the new guys feel like idiots than they do trying to help, really, you know. And I feel like, you know, if anybody comes to me with a question, 9 times out of 10 I'm not going to be able to answer that question, because I just don't have the experience necessary to. But what I am starting to have is a network of people with knowledge. And I mean, nothing makes me happier than connecting two people together, you know, having somebody ask me, you know, I've got a dog doing this, what do I do? And I'll be like, you know what? I don't know, but, you know, Johan Plank might be able to answer that question, or Mark might be able to answer that question, you know. And it's, I really think that unless we kind of all get together and, you know, treat each other right and take care of some of these, you know, we've kind of, even on this podcast a little bit, you know, we've talked a little bit of how the young guys don't necessarily listen and things like that, but ultimately it's the young guys that are going to be keeping this alive. So, you know, let's try and be patient with them, I guess. Let them be young and dumb while they can, and because they're going to be keeping it going.
Be patient for one thing, yes, and give them good information that they can use that will help them, and can have it and present it in that way, not from a know-it-all attitude or holier than thou attitude, but an attitude of, hey, you know, your journey is going to be a little different than mine was. You're going to encounter some things that I didn't have to deal with.
Right.
So I'm going to give you all that I can to try to help you down that road. And you know, I'm going to pray for you that that it all works out.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good note to end on. I really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate everything you do, all the podcasts, everything you've done. You know, I mean, the podcast is just one of the more recent things of the many, many, many things you've done for the us houndsmen and the sport and the breeds and everything. I just appreciate everything you do. So thanks for coming on.
I feel that coming through the headphones, brother. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on with you today. And I'll be listening. Keep the good programming coming.
Likewise.
Thanks again, Bear.
Likewise. Thank you.
Man, I love that sound.